This is Bruce Ward, Vice President, and happy that you're attending our webinar series. We feel that this is a great way to bring some thought leadership to this area of security, specifically for schools. And I've been with the organization for 21 years and speak frequently on the topic of security. Tim?
So I am Tim Homan. I've spent over 25 years in IT for public education, where security was always on the list, but never at the top of the list. There was always something else that was more important. But now that I'm with Peters and Associates, my eyes have been open to how much schools are at risk. So today I look at security on a regular basis, and I see that schools need to move security up on that list. And as a result of all of those kinds of things, we created this webinar series to raise awareness for schools. So today's topic is who you're going to call. We'd like to help you get a plan to figure out who you're going to call. So we're going to start by talking about the National Institute of Standards and Technology's cybersecurity framework. So NIST was given an executive order in 2013 to create this framework to help companies, organizations, schools assess, improve their ability to deal with cybersecurity events when they happen. Currently, 30% of companies in the United States are using this framework. And we're really going to focus our efforts today around protect, detect, and respond. The identify area is really an individual kind of exercise. As an organization, you need to look at what assets, what data, which resources are critical to you, and start your planning around that. It's kind of a big picture on what the framework is. We're going to get into some of these areas in more details. Any comments you want to add on that, Bruce?
No, just I think to your point, the identify phase is really just looking at what you're chartered to protect. I like to use the term, don't spend $10 to protect $1 million, and don't use $1 million to protect $10. Right? The adage is you have to budget appropriately based on the data that you're chartered to protect. There's a lot of things that can be done in the sense of security, but it's kind of looking at what you have and then making a plan from there. And we're going to focus predominantly on the planning aspects, which are protect on. So with that.
All right, so our first area we're going to look at is protection. So when we were kind of brainstorming protection, I think what we came up with was kind of the old school versus the new school. And in protection, there's a maturity model. So you can have antivirus, but do you have next-gen antivirus? So at Peters and Associates, we use a product called WebRoot. And the way it's different is it can protect you in real time. So old school is, I have an antivirus client, someone released a new piece of malware into the internet, so you have to create a definition defined to protect against that specific attack. That needs to be downloaded to your computer, and now you're protected. Which zero-day attacks, new things that are coming, you're kind of always behind on those. WebRoot uses millions of endpoint sensors around the world, and it can detect and predict in real time to protect your systems.
The other aspect of this, Tim, I'd like to introduce, and I know we had introduced this in previous webinars, but for those who might be attending for the first, outside of products, like WebRoot happens to be a technology product, and the technology is certainly excellent. That said, the other two aspects of this that are highly important are process and people. Okay, we don't have the cornerstone on that. We have very good process and we have very good people to execute on that. And presumably in various instances, schools may have their own people or process, but all three need to be followed. Good technology, as we're talking about here, as well as process and having knowledgeable folks and vendor support and so forth too. So that combination is really can be filtered in here as we kind of talk through some of the technology elements that we're doing. But keep in mind that there's process behind it.
So the next area I'm going to talk about is DNS. So every computer needs to use a DNS. It's the way you turn the name Google into its address. And products like Cisco Umbrella can protect you before you even get to that site that is affected. It's kind of an in-between step, and I guess it's called Umbrella partially because it will protect you at home and at work and at Starbucks, so wherever you are. It's taking that simple concept of turning a name, Google, into an address and adding a whole layer of protection in between.
Right, and that can be used for everything from, quite simply web filtering, right? No, we don't want you going to those types of sites, and those could be, 80 different content areas, right? Web filtering is kind of where it began, but there's also, things within web pages that might be inappropriate, right? On a perfectly legitimate web page, there might be a inappropriate or some malware that had been known, and it was reported through some of the agentry, and therefore you're going to be blocked or limited on those sites from getting that same infection, if you will. So we call it the anywhere, anytime, any device protection as we broach using the internet all the time on all of our devices in schools.
So next area would be patching. By default, you kind of have three options. You can ignore all patches. You can download patches and install them later, or you can have it automated where the patches will be downloaded and installed for you. And that's kind of what you can do on an individual computer basis. New School is managing that whole process. So one of my schools, it was a whole week process because we had so many servers and so many workstations. We just split it up that we would do some servers and some workstations on Monday and some on Tuesday and some on Wednesday and Thursday, etc. And it was this whole week-long process to deploy patches. And by using a managed system, not only can you see when it's working, you can see which machines aren't getting those patches.
And the reporting and responsibility, I think, that comes along with managed patching is partially where you get to. We're managing, I think, 2,500 systems per month that we're patching on behalf of our customers, and that comes with this. I was chatting with Tim that this is what that gets documented to is a calendar month, right? So that to a sheet of paper and to the month of November that's coming upon us, you would know all of my patches are getting installed for these devices on this day, and for these devices on this day, and my network equipment on this day, and my server areas and applications on this day. So it's all managed to a month-long calendar so that you can report and know where you're going to be within a month. Obviously, it's ideal to get to 100%, but it's not realistic to get to 100% of your systems every month. And so making sure that systems haven't bypassed a full 30-day period, or prioritized systems certainly are gathered within that 30-day period.
So our next area would be next generation firewalls. So everybody has a firewall. Some may have a next generation firewall that can look deeper into what your organization is doing, look at applications. They have things like intrusion protection. They bring a lot more intelligence into the platform. Data from that next generation firewall can be fed into a system like a security information and event management system. That's called a SIM, where You can analyze all that information and kind of pull out the things that are critical and ignore just the noise.
I like your placement of the next-gen firewall, because if you look at the things right above it, it has all of those items potentially inside of it too. It'll have some, perimeter antivirus for those that are interacting through there. It'll have protected DNS. It is certainly one of the devices you want to consider in terms of patch management. Firewalls often have patching coming out in a frequent basis. So the next-gen firewall is something we've seen people moving to, but is a key protection element in today's new school.
So security awareness. And I don't even know what I would say about ad hoc awareness. I saw it on the news. And so should I be concerned about this? If you don't have some kind of formalized plan in place to train your employees, they are your last line of defense. So we use KnowBe4. They have computer-based training, simulations. You couple that with, in person, and you build this whole awareness campaign to get everybody on the same page and create a culture of, right, we want to be part of the defense.
And furthermore, again, reporting on that and making sure that you're track and measure, right? Just like we do with students, there are periodic assessments to evaluate how you're doing, and are you making improvements? Are you getting worse? What can you do to enhance and make better your employees and or students that are engaging and ultimately being the last line of defense, as Tim mentioned.
So backups. Yeah, we have a backup, but do you have a 3-2-1 backup? That was the default for quite a while. 3 copies of your data, 2 are local, but on different medium, and 1 is offsite. And we've taken that a step further because offsite isn't necessarily good enough. If you are compromised, the first thing the bad actors are going to look at is your backup. And if it's connected to your offsite backup, then they'll delete it, corrupt it. So we've taken it one step further to offline. So 3 copies, 2 are local, 1 is offsite, and 1 has to be offline.
And I would tell the story here on the +1 of the organization that we're aware of that gave us a call basically and had us helping recover their systems when indeed they didn't have an offsite backup, and the on-site backup had been purposely and maliciously attacked and with ransomware and or deleted, as well as all their other systems, leaving them in a situation where they had to recover all of their important production systems over the course of a week, and then recover and or rebuild all their non-production systems over the course of the next 6 weeks. So really it was a 6-week total recovery period at the cost of north of $100,000 to get all their systems back up and running. So 3211 has some risk offsets when done properly.
And lastly, you're logging in. I was on a webinar yesterday, and they said basically every attack has come from either phishing or compromised credentials. And that multi-factor authentication can eliminate the majority of that. I guess my take on that is, in a school, you are giving staff, teachers, resources to use. So here's a computer. I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation to say, if you want to use the computer I'm giving you, then you need to use your phone as a second factor for authentication.
Similarly, I think Google, as well as Microsoft, and they compete in this space, but independent of that, either one can be an identity provider for many of the other applications that our teachers and students need to utilize. So multi-factor authentication can provide a good experience and a centralized experience for performing your login and then getting your work done with the applications underneath.
So moving on, detect. So now we have a lot of good pieces in place. Are we using those to let us know when we have an event? So are you reactive? We've seen every one of these at one of our clients. Oops, that's the last thing you want to have an end user call you up and say, hey, I got this message. Oops, my files have been encrypted. I'm just going to pop through these and we can tell some stories about them. Do you want to wait till you get the call that I didn't get my direct deposit this week? We've given some examples. We've had clients who have had mailboxes compromised where they're waiting to see an invoice come through. And when the invoice comes through, they follow up with an email saying, can you pay that invoice to this account? The gift cards, right? Where new teachers trying to do the right thing and help the principal out when he's stuck in meetings on a Sunday. And business email compromise. It looks like I got a request from the superintendent to transfer funds from this account to another account. So I think you don't want to be reactive. You want to have things in place. You want to have a plan in place so that when these situations come up, you're proactive and you know how to handle them.
In the last 30 days, maybe I'd go to 60. Each one of those has occurred to someone we're aware of. We're getting a reactive often call. We had a school district, so 3 weeks ago now, that called us with ransomware on a Friday afternoon, impacting many systems, including their backups. The gift card item happened a few weeks ago for a business near us. We're watching and monitoring logins on behalf of many of our customers. And for those customers, while we're not able to stop the logins from unauthorized locations, we are detecting in I'll call it a proactive way. We're watching those logins occur and notifying them that, hey, you're going to want to change Josie's password because someone's logging in on Josie's account from Nigeria. Unless Josie happens to be in Nigeria, which she's not. So it's things of that nature.
And so Bruce is taking us right into our next area. We've got some scripts that we've created internally to monitor Office 365. One of the big things is that foreign mailbox login, where someone every day looks at that report, proactive. So the scenario we see typically is a mailbox gets compromised, but no action is taken for an extended period of time. A month, it could be up to 6 months that they're just waiting, they're watching. So if we can let them know that that account was compromised, then we can do something about it before the attack happens. One of the reasons we use WebRoot is because there's a console and we can monitor. So we know that an infection has come to a machine, possibly before the end user knows. Cisco Umbrella, another product with a console. You're patching, another system with a console. It just goes on and on. So having the right tools in place and having someone monitoring all these systems, which is a difficult thing for schools to do. It's difficult to find a person that has the time and to have all these systems set up, but it can really save you in the long run.
And the foreign logins are definitely a big piece of it, but there's, I think, 60 elements we're up to now that we're looking at. Other items that usually rise to the surface are things like mailbox forwarding. many people, set up mailbox forwarding for purposes that are just fine, right? But oftentimes that's also an indicator of compromise that someone is mailbox forwarding and that mail is unintentionally going out to another mailbox. Another one we see is when rules are set up to bury emails under the RSS feeds folder, specifically the RSS feeds as well as deleted items folder. It's been a popular spot for storing email threads when they don't want you to see the conversation from their forward. So that's usually at the point where they're sending out those fake invoices and so forth. And if there are responses back from the customer, they want to control those. And so they'll bury the conversation by rule off in the RSS. So in any case, we're looking for those indicators of compromise. I've mentioned a few there, and there's about 60 in total.
All right, so now we've taken some steps, but something happens. Finally, who are you going to call? So Bruce and I were brainstorming on this, and I think it took us all of a minute to throw this list together. If you don't have a plan, you might as well throw a dart at it, because which one do I do first? So I did my own prioritization. I would disconnect your network so you can stop it from spreading. Shut down the things that you know are affected. Get a hold of the superintendent right away. Here's where it gets tricky. If you haven't, hopefully you have cyber security insurance, but if you haven't gone through the process of figuring out how that works, we had an incident. It took days to coordinate between our school attorney and the insurance provider to get help. And if you have systems that are down, you can't wait days to get help. You need to work through all of these things. You need to assign people to them. You need to practice them, right?
There are often a lot of procedures too, in terms of disconnecting network. There might be some priorities in terms of how you're shutting down servers. There's certainly dependencies, as we can all be aware. So, power down, power up. There are procedure documents around each of these, as well as, to Tim's point, responsibilities and co-responsibilities. So,
even right. Do you want to have an investigation? When are you going to notify your parents? So I think every one of these things on this page is a very detailed discussion, and it's really the basis of your whole plan.
And IT doesn't necessarily have to own the plan. It's often a business function, and IT plays a large role in it. But if IT can get the ball rolling with their own procedures and priorities, that usually is, again, a big portion of it. But you're going to have some other stakeholders within the business that, such as your legal and audit and superintendent.
So we've outlined a lot of stuff. We've given you a lot of statistics. We have things that we can offer to help you with. We can do a vulnerability scan of your network from the outside, looking for things like open RDP. We can do a phishing test as a benchmark just to see where you're at. We're just finalizing that ransomware guide that we've been talking about. So these are all some of the services that we offer for free. And I guess I have a few final thoughts. When I was starting to look at all of this, I know schools have really shifted toward Google. A lot of our business clients are Office 365. And, I was just trying to kind of, where do they stand in terms of security? And a piece of information I came across is that Google's primary revenue stream is from advertising. And they have a history of confusing privacy policies because that limits their ability to sell their data to the advertisers. Whereas Microsoft, right, it's clear. They don't scan data and they don't sell it. And it's a huge difference between the way Google operates and the way Microsoft does. And Microsoft has years and years of experience on, finding those security holes and fixing them. And Google is very new to this. So, I'm a teacher, I'm sharing a document, and anybody that has the link to that document can manipulate it. And if that gets out, someone can insert bad code into it and you're compromised. So it's just, I think, something to be aware of. It's a big difference between the players. And that webinar I was on yesterday, someone had asked about raising awareness. And I guess my thought to that is train your people as to what to look for, test them, sending out, right, phishing emails and seeing how they respond, and then sharing stories. And that's what we've been doing over these 3 webinars. And it's something you can do internally within your own organization. These stories are happening on a daily basis. And it may not be always schools, but the attacks are the same, the results are the same. So you need to be out there sharing the stories as well. Any final thoughts from you, Bruce?
No, just yesterday we had conducted a security awareness training. This was our 3rd iteration of it for this organization. And for the first time, they had finally decided to begin a testing process for their employees. Annual training, they decided, was not enough, and they wanted to go to some, they're moving to quarterly testing. And they're moving to also video-based training, right? They're expanding their security awareness, and how appropriate, since October is Security Awareness Month. And lo and behold, the week prior to this training, they had conducted a phishing test in their organization, and the overall numbers were that 28% of their organization had clicked the links that were phishing links and not recognized the signs in the email that they should have clicked it. And then 15%, which turned out to be, in their case, almost 60 people, provided login and password information. Those were 60 password changes that needed to occur thereafter, and really was kind of a big, wide eye-opener that security awareness was not where they needed to be, even though they had been conducting annual training. So I just, in this month of October that we're in and closing out here, I think it's good to keep our eyes on security awareness, and happy that you all participated in some education, and now it's moving on to the planning phase for your environments. Any questions that are out there, Samantha?
No, not any questions, but we do have one comment from Jeff, and he says that he loved the Halloween picture at the beginning of the presentation.
That one is quite appropriate based on the day here. So now, if you can get some snowfall going in some of that background, that would be extra excellent.
All right,
well,
and
if there's no hands raised, then yeah, we can.
Marcelo asks if we can get the slides, and yes, those slides will be posted on the recap. That recap blog will be posted on peters.com, and we'll send out an email on Tuesday with the link to that.
And we have finalized the ransomware guide. I know Tim made mention of that in each of the webinars here, and as of this morning, it is final.